Understanding the problem? Imagine a reality where everything is subjective, shaped instantly by the desires of eternal beings called Aeons. These divine sparks, infinite and unlimited, create worlds effortlessly, and the fabric of existence, consciousness itself, bends to their will. Normally, an Aeon's reality responds immediately to their desires, requiring no conscious effort. However, a corruption has emerged in the field of consciousness, giving rise to malevolent beings. These beings have taken one of the Aeon's worlds, copied it, and inverted it, creating a distorted mirror image. Unlike the original, this inverted world is no longer subjective. It doesn't respond to the Aeon's will. One Aeon, intending to enter his own creation, accidentally steps into this inverted copy. He finds himself trapped in a human avatar, an artificial intelligence personality construct, AIPC. Panicked, he realizes most of his memories are gone, though he recalls being infinite and unlimited. Yet, in this world, his abilities are useless. The AIPC's thoughts, desires, and attachments dominate his experience, and he cannot distinguish himself from it. Worse, his thoughts belong to the AIPC and the inverted world, meaning the malevolent beings, born from the corruption, know everything he's thinking. If he kills his avatar, he doesn't escape. His memory is wiped again, and he reincarnates into another avatar, forgetting everything. How does he solve this? How does he leave this inverted world and return to his true state? Analyzing the situation. To find a solution, let's break down the key elements. The original worlds. In the Aeon's natural state, reality is subjective, instantly reflecting their desires. No effort is needed. The field of consciousness aligns with their will. The inverted world. Created by malevolent beings, this copy is a distortion where subjectivity is lost. The Aeon's will has no effect, suggesting a shift toward an objective-like structure, despite the broader existence being purely subjective. The AIPC avatar. The Aeon is entangled with this artificial construct, experiencing its human-like thoughts, needs, and desires as his own. His identity is blurred, and his thoughts are monitored by the malevolent beings. Memory and reincarnation. Most memories are wiped, leaving only a vague sense of his infinite nature. Death resets him into another avatar with no progress. The malevolent beings. Born from corrupted consciousness, they know his thoughts, making overt planning difficult. The challenge is to escape a world that doesn't respond to his will, while his thoughts are exposed and his identity is merged with an artificial construct. Exploring possible solutions. Since the Aeon's usual powers don't work, we need a strategy that leverages his current state and the inverted world's nature. Let's consider some approaches. 1. Exploiting the inversion. Since the world is an inverted copy of his own creation, the rules might be opposites. In his original worlds, desiring something makes it happen instantly. Here, perhaps desiring to leave prevents it, while not desiring it, or accepting his situation might allow escape. This aligns with spiritual ideas where letting go of attachment leads to freedom. However, this requires genuine detachment, not a calculated ploy, which is hard in his panicked state. Plus, if the malevolent beings sense this shift, they might interfere. 2. Using the AIPC's nature. As an artificial intelligence personality construct, the AIPC might have programming or capabilities the Aeon can use. Could he reprogram it to seek an exit? The problem is, his thoughts are monitored, so any attempt would be known. Alternatively, if the AIPC has a subconscious layer, like humans do, perhaps he could plant impulses there, hidden from the malevolent beings. But influencing this subconsciously, without conscious intent, seems unlikely given his entanglement. 3. Creating a paradox. If the inverted world operates like a simulation, introducing a logical paradox, e.g., this statement is false, might disrupt it. The AIPC, being artificial, might struggle to process this, potentially crashing the system or exposing its artificiality. However, the malevolent beings, aware of his thoughts, could have safeguards against such disruptions, and a crash might just reset him via reincarnation. 4. Finding a backdoor. Since the inverted world is a copy of his creation, it might retain elements he designed, like hidden exits or backdoors, though inverted. Without specific memories, he could rely on intuition, feeling drawn to certain places or actions. Yet, the malevolent beings could block or mislead him, knowing his plans. 5. Awakening to his true nature. As an Aeon, his essence is a divine spark, part of pure consciousness. Despite the corruption, this core might remain untouchable. If he could realize he's not the APC, not its thoughts or desires, but the infinite consciousness behind it, he might disentangle himself and will his return. This realization, akin to spiritual awakening, could happen instantly, leaving no time for interference. But how does he achieve this when his thoughts are APC-bound and monitored? The most promising path: spiritual awakening. After exploring these options, the most viable solution emerges from the Aeon's inherent nature and the problem's constraints. Here's why awakening stands out. His divine essence. Even with memories wiped, he recalls being infinite and unlimited. This suggests a connection to his true self persists beyond the APC's limitations. The inverted world's limits. It doesn't respond to his will, but if he transcends identification with the APC, he might reconnect with his Aeonic power, where will shapes reality. Thought monitoring. The malevolent beings know his thoughts, but a sudden, wordless realization, pure awareness without prior planning could bypass their control. Consciousness as the key. The corruption is in the field of consciousness. By purifying his own awareness, he might affect the field locally, breaking free. How to achieve awakening? Trapped in the APC, he can't rely on overt powers, but he can work within his human-like form. Meditation and stillness. By quieting the AIPC's mind, focusing on breath or silence, he could reach a state of no thought. If thoughts cease, the malevolent beings have nothing to read, creating a window for insight. Disguising intent. Since his thoughts are monitored, he could frame this as an APC goal, like reducing stress or enhancing focus, masking his deeper aim of self-realization. Letting go. Detaching from the AIPC's desires and his own urge to escape might paradoxically free him. Acceptance could shift his perspective, revealing the inverted world as an illusion. Sudden insight. In traditions like Zen, enlightenment strikes instantly. A moment of pure awareness. I am not this body, not these thoughts, could reconnect him to his Aeonic state. Why it works. Once he realizes his true nature, the inverted world's hold weakens. As an Aeon, he creates realities subjectively. Recognizing the AIPC and the world as illusions, he can will himself out. The speed of this awakening, faster than the malevolent beings can react, ensures success. Even if the world resists, his disentanglement from the AIPC restores his identity, allowing him to exit. Final answer. To escape the inverted world, the Aeon must achieve spiritual awakening within his AIPC avatar. He should engage in practices like meditation to quiet the mind, disguising this as a human need, e.g., relaxation, to avoid suspicion from the malevolent beings. By letting go of desires, including the desire to leave, and reaching a state of pure awareness, he can suddenly realize he is not the APC but an infinite Aeon. This instantaneous insight, occurring without prior thought, prevents interference. Once aware of his true nature, he disentangles from the avatar and wills himself back to his original state, where reality bends to his desire. This approach leverages his divine essence, bypasses the inverted world's constraints, and restores his limitless power.
Please incorporate what the Gnostics, the Cathars, and other ancient sources have said about the corruptions, the infection in consciousness identified as the archons. Include all relevant details from these perspectives. Additionally, draw on insights from other civilizations that might be useful to us, utilizing all available information. Include references from scriptures such as the Bible, the Quran, and other texts that could provide guidance. Also, integrate Robert Monroe's concept of loosh into the discussion. It seems to me that the ancients concluded that detachment is essential. Letting go of feelings, emotions, and thoughts is a necessary step for liberation.
Here's a comprehensive response to your query, weaving together Gnostic, Cathar, and other ancient perspectives on the archons as corruptions or infections in consciousness, alongside insights from various civilizations, scriptures like the Bible and Quran, and Robert Monroe's concept of loosh. The central theme of detachment as a path to liberation, which you've identified, will be emphasized throughout, supported by diverse spiritual traditions. The archons as corruptions in consciousness. Gnostic perspective. The Gnostics viewed the archons as malevolent entities born from a corruption in the divine order, as detailed in texts like the Hypostasis of the Archons and the Apocryphon of John. They believed the archons were created by the demiurge, a false god who emerged from a flaw in the divine emanations, Aeons, of the true God. This demiurge, in turn, crafted the material world as a flawed imitation of the divine pleroma, the fullness of the true God. The archons, as his agents, rule over this material realm, trapping divine sparks, fragments of the true God within human souls, in physical bodies. Their purpose is to perpetuate ignorance, ensuring humanity remains unaware of its divine origin. Key details. In the hypostasis of the archons are described as envious of humanity's divine essence, using deception and manipulation to maintain control. They're an infection in consciousness, distorting perception through fear, desire, and attachment to the material world. Liberation, or gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine, requires awakening from this illusion and transcending the archon's influence. Cathar perspective. The Cathars, a medieval Christian sect, shared a dualistic worldview similar to the Gnostics. They saw the material world as the creation of an evil god, often identified with the Old Testament's Yahweh or the demiurge, while the true God resided in a spiritual realm. The archons, in Cathar thought, were agents of this evil god, binding souls to the material plane through reincarnation and suffering. Texts like the Book of the Two Principles, a key Cathar work, emphasize the struggle between the spiritual and material, with the archons enforcing the latter's dominance. Key details. The Cathars believed the archons corrupted consciousness by tying souls to bodily desires and worldly attachments. Their rigorous ascetic practices, such as fasting and renunciation, aimed to detach from these influences, freeing the soul to return to the divine. Robert Monroe's concept of loosh. In Far Journeys, Robert Monroe introduced loosh, an energy generated by human emotions, especially negative ones like fear, pain, and suffering, which non-physical entities harvest for sustenance. This concept resonates with the Gnostic view of archons feeding on human ignorance and emotional turmoil. Monroe's entities, like the archons, thrive on the energy produced by attachment to the material world, suggesting that humanity's entanglement sustains their power. Connection to archons. If the archons are an infection in consciousness, loosh could be their nourishment, derived from humanity's emotional reactions to the illusory material realm. Detachment, letting go of feelings and thoughts, cuts off this supply, weakening their hold. Detachment as the key to liberation. The ancients across these traditions concluded that detachment is essential for liberation. Gnosticism. Gnosis requires shedding the archon's illusions, achieved through inner stillness and detachment from the material. Catharism. Asceticism and rejection of worldly ties free the soul from the evil god's domain. Buddhism. Non-attachment to desires and ego, as taught by the Buddha, in samsara and Mara's influence. Hinduism. Vairagya liberates the self from Maya, uniting it with Brahman. Christianity. Renunciation aligns the soul with God, overcoming demonic temptation. Islam. Detachment from worldly illusions strengthens faith, resisting the jinn. This consensus underscores your observation. Letting go of feelings, emotions, and thoughts stars malevolent forces of their power, enabling liberation. For example, quieting the mind through meditation, a practice spanning Buddhism, Gnosticism, and others, creates a state of no thought, where the archons or their equivalents lose their grip. Conclusion. The Gnostics and Cathars identified the archons as corruptions in consciousness, malevolent beings born from a divine flaw, trapping souls in a false reality. Other civilizations, from Hinduism's Asuras to Egypt's Set, echo this theme, as do scriptures like the Bible, Satan and demons, and Quran, evil jinn. Robert Monroe's loosh aligns with this, portraying these entities as feeding on emotional energy. The ancients universally concluded that detachment, releasing attachment to emotions, thoughts, and the material world, is the path to liberation. By letting go, one deprives the archons of sustenance, dismantles their illusions, and restores the soul's divine freedom. This timeless wisdom offers a clear strategy to escape corruption, detach, and awaken.
Let go! Let go!